welcome to We Never Met, the podcast where I have interesting strangers on every single week. Today we have, if you want to introduce yourself, Travis Fields, but you're known as...
I'm known as Campo Graphic, murals, and design.
Where does that come from, just starting off?
So Campo Graphic is a name that I built off of the name Campo. Campo is actually it's a translation of my last name. It is a Spanish term. I'm not Spanish, but kind of in a serendipitous way, I met a woman a few years ago who had the same name as my great grandmother. Her name was Faith, and when my great grandmother passed some years ago, I did a few Faith pieces for her. I liked the letters and I liked the name. And one night over sushi, this woman named Faith told me that this restaurant in Reno, Nevada, which is called Campo, means field or fields. And kind of in between looking for a new name at that point, I looked at those letters. I'm like, well, this is nice. The M in the middle has that nice balance. The A and the P are kind of like opposites of each other when they're made lowercase. And then the C and the O have that round thing going on together at the end. I was like, this is nice. And so I just started running with that for a while.
When you were growing up, even to go further back from in your childhood, did you grow up in the Portland area? Are you a native here?
I like to joke and say I'm Oregon native, but it's Oregon, Ohio.
Sure. Yeah. Oregon somewhere.
Yeah, Oregon somewhere. So as a kid, I felt like it was kind of in the cards for me to end up in Oregon State. Yeah, Oregon is a little suburb of Toledo, Ohio, which is northwest, just a little bit south of Detroit. Tiny, sleepy city there, forever in the shadow of Detroit, Cleveland, Chicago.
Yeah, for sure. So what brought you out here?
Lack of humidity.
That is so awesome, isn't it?
The weather. No, I went to college in Detroit, Michigan for a couple of years after high school, and was studying graphic design there. After a couple of years in the city, it really started getting me down, and I wanted to just completely flip the script in my life. So I picked up and moved cross country to this little organic farm in California. Doing some random research for a project in school, I came upon this place called the Aerosol Ranch, Saffron Ranch down in Fiddletown, California. And this guy was he was a corporate bigwig. He retired early. He bought a farm out there, and he ended up hosting woofers for his vegetable farm, and he hosted artist residents too. So his property was just covered in travel campers, all covered in graffiti and stuff. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. And I was on a whim, I was like, what's the chances I could come out and check this out? And he's like, just let me know when you're coming. Stay if you want. For real? He's like, for real, just come on out here. So I had $200, packed everything I had into my Chevy Cavalier at the time and drove across, and I stayed on the West Coast ever since. Wow.
So when you were back in Ohio, were you doing art and pursuing art from a young age? Was it something that drew you in?
I've always been kind of artistically minded. I like to, when I was a kid, I used to draw anime and Dragon Ball Z and stuff. That was that was my thing. And without much to do in Ohio, we found ways to kind of occupy ourselves. And, I skateboarded and played guitar in a metal band and stuff like that too. But by high school time, graffiti had started getting introduced into my life. I had some friends in school that were starting to get into it, and I would look over their shoulders at what they would look at on computers and in school when they weren't paying attention to the teacher. I'm like, hey, that looks kind of cool. And we just kind of started going from there.
Yeah. Cause how do you practice? Cause I remember in school vividly, people would do the graffiti lettering, they would just draw it out on paper and things like that. Is that how you initially got into it? Is just drawing it in classes and in the school, and then
drawing it on anything that you could find. Yeah, just constantly scribbling, using Sharpies and chisel tip markers and stuff, just practicing tags, trying to draw pieces. And I mean, we didn't know what the heck we were doing back then. We didn't have any teachers or mentors or influence, so we grew up in the era of for anyone else out there that follows graffiti, 12 Ounce Prophet. 12 Ounce Prophet was a graffiti magazine for a while, and pre-internet era magazines were the only ways to see graffiti that was not in your area. When the internet came out, they transitioned online, and it became a big forum where every city across the country had its own forum on there, and all the graffiti that was there would get documented and put up online, so you could see what was going on regionally around the country and around the world.
Yeah, and back then, what do you think that specifically drew you to that style of art and like that and like tagging and street art? Like what was it about that drew you in?
I think it was kind of just the rebellious act of it. Like you're not supposed to do it. You're not supposed to do it. Not everybody else knows about it. It's not mainstream. It's, it goes against the grain. And I don't know, as a kid, I just kind of always felt like a kind of a shithead, like, in the daytime, it's like, I mean, I was in like Boy Scouts and martial arts and stuff, but I still like to kind of subvert the culture if I could a bit. I just thought it was intriguing. It's this mysterious folk art that nobody really knows much about. You get into it, you realize that there's a really deep history rooted in graffiti. Yeah,
because like where does graffiti come from? Like where does it originate from?
Graffiti, as we know it, originated in New York City in the 1970s.
Who started it?
That is kind of widely contested who originally started it, but a lot of the credit goes to a New York City artist named Taki 183, I think it is. Yeah. And he would and in New York, writers there, they would take their name and they would take their block, the block that they grew up on, so the number, and they would go and they'd write that on buildings all around. And at the time, it was just a way to signify just, I was here. I'm from down here, but, I was all the way up there. And you see that tag and you're like, wow, I've seen that, clear the way, way down to the other side of town. And then just caught on like wildfire.
And so when you were growing up and when you started getting into it, how did you practice? So you were sort of like almost like a artist vigilante, like you did karate and Boy Scouts during the day, and at night you would go and practice graffiti and tagging.
The only way to really get good at graffiti, at least at that time, was to just go out and do it. Repetition, like any other practice or craft or art form, the more you practice it, the better and more comfortable you'll be. Tagging, which is an art form. Most people that see tags, just, like the scribble tags and stuff, they might not see much artistic value in there, but there is an art form to it. And just the way that your hand moves and rotates with a can and how far it is away from a wall, just like a signature, like a signature on a piece of paper, there is an expression to that line. And the more and more you do it, the more comfortable you become with doing that. And then you can start to build on more advanced graffiti from there.
Yeah. Cause I mean, if anyone has handled like spray paint before, it's so hard to use. It's really difficult to learn how to like make anything look cool with it. Cause getting closer or further away, it's so tough. So was the learning curve like pretty easy for you? Did you find it pretty easy to get into it and like start making stuff that you were like, wow, this is actually pretty neat?
I sucked. I sucked as a kid. I mean, I thought that I could like be really cool when I started. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to skip all the simple stuff and go right into trying to draw like abstract wild style pieces and stuff. And there was just no structure or composition to it. I mean, as high schoolers, we probably thought, hey, that looks pretty cool, but it didn't. And we got humbled real quick and realizing we had to go back to the alphabet. To start with the alphabet again and just draw some basic straight letters out. And once you got comfortable drawing those straight letters, you could start to add some bends to them, add some curves, kind of stretch things out. And that's really what graffiti is I mean, you're taking just a traditional font or an alphabet and you are skewing the proportions of that to such a degree that makes it hard for most people to be able to read it, but it is still legible to other artists and people that know how to read graffiti.
I guess with that, is there then, how do you like get into like your own style and like have a nuance to it as well to make it your own? Once you actually learn how to do like an A or a B, like what was your process in like finding your own style within that art?
There's different ways to approach it. Some people are just born with a natural gift and knack that they can just draw a really abstract A. They can make letters look really bendy, but typically the way that it goes for a lot of people when they're learning is they start by drawing crappy graffiti, trying to do what they think is cool, and then they're like, well, I should probably actually start from a basis somewhere. And before the internet, you would look around your city, you would look at other graffiti that's in your city and try to mimic it. You would look at the way that people would draw tags, or maybe you even knew some of those artists and they would kind of school you on it. And they would show you like, this is how you tag, this is how you how you write these letters, at least out here, because every city has a different type of tag, a different hand style. You know, tags from the Bay Area look different from tags from New York, look different from tags from Philly. And so if you're lucky enough to know some older writers, sometimes they'll put you on. If you show some commitment and dedication to it, they'll teach you. Or you look at stuff that inspires you and you try to emulate that on paper and then try to twist it and make something out of it that's unique to you. Now, that said, biting is, you know, exactly that's biting someone else's style.
Yeah.
It usually gets called out pretty quickly. And especially in the internet era now, it's pretty easy to see if you bite someone else's color scheme or their letters. And it's like, it's just kind of whack. You can't be original, so you're just going to take someone else's stuff. But typically, I mean, there's nothing wrong with taking influence from places, as long as you can then like shift it to make it your own and make it something that's unique to you.
Yeah.
And I'd say that that's kind of the path a lot of writers take.
Yeah. Cause I mean, even just getting the consistency of like writing all in one way, I feel like that's just really mind blowingly tough to me. When you were growing up then and starting to do this, I am from a similar Midwestern town. Were your parents mad that you were doing this, or like, did you have any pushback from them? Because I feel like my parents would have been mad if I did.
Oh man.
Yeah.
My dad was always the easy one. I don't think he ever really much cared. I lived with my mom most of the time, and yeah, I don't think she was crazy about it. I don't think I really let on to it quite as much as I would have. You know, like I had drawers underneath my bed, and I pulled those drawers out and hid my paint underneath there, so she never found my paint. You know, and would wear gloves so I wouldn't have paint. Well, I probably didn't wear gloves at first, so I would sneak out on Saturday nights and, you know, go tagging with my buddies, and then have to go to church in the morning on Sunday, and I was completely exhausted. You know, I was up till 4 a.m, and she's like, "Get your ass up! You got to go to church." You know, and I'd be like, "Oh, whatever, fine." And I'd go there and had paint all over my hands and stuff. It's, you know, living a double life in, you know, Midwest suburban town.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I feel like when you grow up, at least from my experience, you think you're being a lot more covert than you actually are with parents, you know, like they can't know, like I'm hiding this so well, you know? Yeah, for sure. But growing up in Ohio then, and sort of learning there with your friends, do your friends still do it, or are you the one person that sort of took this to the next level and continued to learn?
Surprisingly and kind of unsurprisingly, I guess, we started a crew in high school. Me and 2 other guys, one of whom passed away a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, he was one of our original 3 members, who went by the name Eager, Corey Zotner. So the 3 of us had started, and the other guy, Chiro, he is actually, he's a full-time artist now in Toledo, Ohio. He's booked. He's got murals all over the city. And there isn't a lot of competition there. So him and one of our other crewmates, Abstract Overspray, they're both full-timers in Toledo now, and they're booked. They've got walls. They've got projects left and right. I'm the one that moved away from home. And I have, you know, all 3 of us have kind of evolved from painting just graffiti into more mural arts and more just professional work. The reality kind of struck us after a while that, you know, graffiti is still fun. You know, it's still, there's nothing like it. But we realized that as we're getting older, we're like, you know, to get arrested or get caught at this point is stupid. You know, we're all really good at what we do. So why not try to market ourselves and create work that will be substantial, that clients would want, or people would actually want to see in our communities. And so we just kind of all evolved from there. We're all like 15 years in at this point, 15 to 20 years in. And I think that's a pretty natural progression for a lot of people that grow up writing.
What can they arrest you for doing that? Like, is it a fine, or like what is the deal?
Depends on where you're at. In California, at least it was this way a few years ago. It might still be this way. First offense is felony.
Whoa.
Yeah. First offense is felony vandalism. Just because California, like Bay Area and Los Angeles, have had such a hard time with it, they have to have stricter laws there. Now, other places, you know, it might be a fine. Some places they might just take your paint and say, go home, and like, you know, it's not worth the paperwork. Depends on what you're tagging, depends on what you're painting on. Graffiti inherently is not illegal, and that's a common misconception. Graffiti in and of itself is not illegal. Writing on other people's things that don't belong to you is illegal. Painting graffiti with permission on a building might not be technically considered graffiti because it's with permission.
Right.
But again, it kind of depends on what you're painting, you know. And this is something that comes up in Portland a lot right now, where so many buildings here have you know, tags all over them and stuff. And the good artists here will go around and they'll paint pieces on these walls, you know, without permission. But, you know, if the owners come out, they're like, hey, if you don't like it, we'll paint over it, but it looks a lot better than your wall did. And they actually will say like, oh no, that actually looks pretty good. Keep doing that.
Yeah.
And we'll keep it.
You talked about the situation in California a little bit, but like what is your feeling on that sort of stuff? Like, I guess, what is your feeling with the graffiti scene and like how it's developed over time? Do you find that there's still a lot of people who do it because they love to do it, or do it because they want to get attention, or like what's the vibe in the scene right now? It's
a sport to some extent, you know, who can get the best spots, who can get the most spots, get the most difficult to reach. Graffiti's kind of in a weird point right now, and anybody that's involved with it will probably agree that it's in a weird point right now, because with the advent of the internet, you don't have to leave your bedroom to see good graffiti. You can see graffiti from all over the world just from Instagram. And a lot of purists will say that graffiti died with the internet, because it used to be, if you wanted to see graffiti, you'd have to go look for it, or you know, maybe you saw it in magazines or something, but you had to go look for it and go searching. Now you don't even have to go anywhere. And, you know, regional styles used to be confined to specific cities and places as well. Now it's like, if you're on the East Coast and you want to write like you're from the West Coast, well, you can see all the influence to do that, and vice versa. So it is kind of in a weird point, but there's a lot of innovation going on right now as well. There's a weird movement in graffiti going on, where graffiti is just weird looking, and it's wobbly and noodly, and doesn't have quite as much structure as what it used to, but it's just a new channel. It's a new vein. And even kind of like with anti-style, there's such a thing as anti-style graffiti right now. And that's kind of a lot of what goes on in Portland, where the idea is not to make it look good. It's to make it look like graffiti. It shouldn't be arty. It shouldn't have little hearts and doodads and stuff in it. Look like graffiti.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's not up to me to decide if that's good or bad or not. It's up to the collective consciousness. I like it in all regards. I like it in all capacities. I have a preference towards nicer looking tags and throws. You know, I figure if you're going to go out and spend the effort to, you know, risk yourself to tag something, why not try to deliver the best possible tag you can, make it look dope.
Yeah.
So that other people see that and be like, damn, that looks dope.
Yeah.
That's kind of my take on it.
And excuse me, because I am completely ignorant to this topic. So
that's okay. We're gonna get you caught up.
Yeah, I'm interested in like the culture and all that stuff. So, is there rules? Like, if you go and, you know, tag something or put graffiti on, because I see this often too, where people will write over other people's stuff.
Oh yeah.
Is that like not cool? Because I feel like what's the point of that? You know,
there is kind of an unspoken code of ethics in graffiti. Very simply, don't go over it if you can't burn it. Don't go over it if you're not ready to deal with repercussions. Don't go over it if you're not good. There have been historic beefs over the course of time. There have been beatdowns. People have gotten put in hospitals over this. It can get really serious depending. But the basic rules are as follows. You've got tags, which are just what most people see is just tags. Throw ups or throws are kind of your bubble letter pieces. Yeah. They're bubbly. They're filled in, usually black and white. Fill-ins are usually they're like straight letter pieces, but they've got a little bend to them. Pieces are usually multicolored, more involved. They've got detail to them. And then burners. Burners are, they look like they're on fire. They're bright and colorful, really flashy, lots and lots of detail. In that order, throws go over tags, fill-ins go over throws, pieces go over fill-ins, burners go over pieces. So if you really are going to go over something, like if you're at a wall and the wall is completely covered, you're going to look for when you're going to go over something, you're going to look for what's kind of least considerable value. A toy graffiti, which, new kids and stuff, usually gets dusted over. No big deal. But, even if there's a throw up on something that doesn't look very good, but it's from someone that died, or it's been there for a long time, or it's an OG writer, if you touch that, you can expect to get some consequences for that. The basic rule of thumb is don't touch it. Sometimes it's going to happen. Sometimes it just happens. But my rule of thumb is like, I don't like going over anything.
Yeah. Cause I was going to ask, like, when you do a mural or something that you get commissioned, do you get frustrated or mad if someone will tag over it or something?
It's kind of the name of the game.
Yeah.
It's inevitable at some point, your work will get gone over. And I mean, even good graffiti too, like stupid kids will come along and tag over it, not knowing, maybe you've got a big section of open color inside of your piece, and it's like, oh, there's a big yellow space. I'm going to put a big black tag in there so it stands out.
Yeah.
Or people like to come up and side bust you, and they'll tag something right next to your piece in hopes that, oh, well, this piece is probably going to get photographed a lot. Maybe the tag will pop up in that photo as well.
Oh.
I've had to fix up some of my murals before. I don't let it ride. I maintain my spots. If you go over it, I'm going to get rid of it as quick as possible and make it seem like it was never even there.
Yeah. I feel like then the graffiti world probably just not for me, because I feel like it would hurt my feelings. I'd be like, come on.
People get sore.
I mean, like, I tried so hard and I made this look really nice, and I worked so long on this, and now you're just painting over it. But anyways, yeah, so that's probably not the feel for me, I guess.
I've got a good story of that one, actually. So this past summer, so I'm from Ohio, and so I still try to go home like once a year or so to visit. A few years back, when Robin Williams had passed away, I was in Ohio at the time, and I actually I had this just like burst of energy. I'm like, I'm going to do a tribute mural for this guy. I'm going to do a big portrait of him. And within just a few days' time, I was like, I don't know where I'm going to do this or what, but I found a comedy club that they gave me permission to do this on the side of their building. And it was there for a good 5 years. Yeah, 5 years or so. No one ever touched it. And last summer, I went back home for a couple weeks. And as I was on my way there, someone had sent me a photo of it. Some dude who was like methed out or something. It was a whole thing. I think he got into like a high-speed chase and fed
Jesus
in his
Christ.
house. Like he was going around tagging over murals and was like joyriding through town or something. It all caught up to him. So he scribbled out like the whole bottom half of the portrait just.
Yeah.
And someone sent me that, and I was like, well, as a matter of fact, I'm on my way home right now. So I actually got to fix it while I was back there, and made it look like nothing had ever happened to it.
Yeah.
It's on my Instagram too. You can see kind of the before and after of that.
Yeah.
Check it out. But I just got lucky, right place, right time. Because, if that would have stayed on there and I wasn't home for 6 months, either it would have gotten tagged over more. The business might have painted over because they said this looks bad for us and just painted the whole thing over. So there is an importance to keeping up on things and maintaining them. Just like you maintain your yard and cut the grass, keep it so the weeds don't pop up.
I mean, that's tragic in a lot of ways because he died,
that's disrespectful on a couple of levels.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I feel like I'll let you know though, because I have a visual on your mural every day.
I have no doubt I will get several notifications on that, I'm sure, but
it's so beautiful, by the way. We haven't even spoke about that. It's such a beautiful mural. How long did it take you to do that one from like start to finish? Because I know you got some help on the entire outside, but how long did that mural take you?
It was 3 weeks.
3 weeks. And can you explain the backstory of that one a little bit so people know what we're talking about? I mean, I see it all the time, but
So the wall you're talking about, Sam, it's a 13 by 50 foot mural that features a portrait of the young poet laureate Amanda Gorman on there. It was a nice headshot that I found of her, and I put it inside of like a bright yellow halo with this kind of futuristic, kind of psychedelic vibed out space behind it that's got there's kind of a deeper context and story to what's going on with some of the background details, but it's a very bright, optimistic piece. It's very colorful. It's intended to inspire and brighten people's days that drive past it. The building that mural is on, it's at the corner of Northeast 15th and Killingsworth Avenue in Northeast Portland. The building was a former Island Foods. I learned that it was I think the Oregonian, was it the Oregonian? Some news outlet in town used the building at some point in time before that. So the building's been around forever, but for the last 6-7 years or so, the building has been completely desolate. It's been abandoned. It's been a very popular spot that gets tagged a lot. It's just a neighborhood bomb spot. Kids just would know it's like, yeah, you can come up and paint on there and no one's going to care. And it's probably going to ride for a while. Mm-hmm. So the backstory on that is I live in the neighborhood. I've gone past that building every day for years. Mm-hmm. And I've always wanted to paint something on it. I just said, I'm like, I got to figure out who owns it, how to get in touch with them and just offer like, hey, the building looks like trash. Can we do something cool on here? And then earlier in January of this year, I noticed the doors were open and there was a bunch of stuff being loaded in. And so I stopped to check it out and found out a young woman was opening a thrift store in there, or was building out a thrift store. And her name is Aisha Kita. Her shop is called Diamond Penny Bargain Market. And I approached her and I said, look, you're going to have a really hard time fighting graffiti off this building if you're trying to open a business in here. It's historically been known that you could tag this. And so every time you paint it, it's just going to get done again. Mm-hmm. So maybe let's work together on this. I've always wanted to paint a mural on here. I can pull a team of artists together and we can wrap this whole building for you. Just paint every available square inch surface. So, if somebody does want to come back, they're going to feel like an asshole for going over it. And she's like, well, that sounds really cool, but I don't have any money for this, Yeah. And I was like, don't worry about it. We'll figure that out. And after doing some math, I realized it was going to take probably a few $1,000s, and that would have been out of pocket. But I put together a GoFundMe, and together with the community, we raised $2,600 on the GoFundMe, and that paid for all the artist materials, all the paint and everything, to get everybody covered up for it. So once we had the money set, it was just a matter of picking a weekend in the early spring when it wasn't raining and just getting started on it. So we've got kind of a heavy roster on it, and a bunch of artists there's like 14 artists all together, and they're all well known and respected in their own lanes. So, and I kind of picked people that I thought whose styles might complement each other well. The whole thing really, really came off. It's the whole building is a color bomb now. You cannot miss it if you're driving northeast. And that was the idea, is we wanted to just put all this attention onto that building and on that site to highlight the fact that a young woman that had immigrated here from Africa as a kid, she took up the challenge to build a business in the middle of the pandemic, what seemed like a completely unreasonable or unattainable goal. And she did it. And she did it with massive community support. Mm-hmm. And she's off and running now.
No, it's a beautiful mural, and the building's beautiful in general. Like sometimes I think, and I'm talking to you right now, and I'm like, it's so good. I'm like, how does a person do that? It's like hard for me to even wrap my head around it, because I think I'm so, I don't know. I look out the window and I'm like, you could give me 100 years and I don't think I could do that. Like, it's just so incredible. So is this all planned out beforehand, or is it like sort of like you just go with the flow when you're on the piece and see where it goes?
Something that big, I have to blueprint it out ahead of time. I had a little bit of stress putting that project together. It was such a big wall, so much room to fill up, and I wanted to make sure that it was going to be something really dynamic and powerful, and not just arbitrary. So I had the majority of it defined before I started, but there were some things that had to be improvised on the spot. But typically, though, with a big wall project, I do like to have it all blueprinted out, know my colors, have all my contour lines and all the shapes and everything defined, so that when I do go to install it, there's no guessing if this color works here, or how detailed should this be. Like, I know that when I'm standing up close to it, that I know that this is all going to work once you stand back and look at it. Because otherwise, you spend all day long checking it, checking yourself, like, does this work? Does this work?
Yeah.
And so, had I had the whole thing blueprinted out, that 3 weeks might have been maybe a week and a half. But there was a lot of time I spent just looking at it, trying to decide, well, what do I want to do next in here?
With all those layers and all those different elements, is there like a way to go? Like, do you paint the person first, or like the background first? And then, like how does that work? Like, is there a specific route that you go to make it work?
I follow 2 protocols. I work top to bottom, and I work background forwards.
Okay.
Typically, I try to get the most difficult subject matter out of the way first. So in that case, it was the portrait, because once that's done, the rest is kind of downhill. It's a lot of fill-in stuff and just kind of fill in the space in. And I work top to bottom because being up on a ladder, there's going to be some overspray that falls down and, paint drips and stuff like that. So at least if you're working top down, as you work to the lower levels, you can clean it up as you go. And also it prevents the ladder from like pushing like marks into the wall, which can like scuff the paint that's already on there. And then it's just also kind of just a weird gratification. You get the ladder work out of the way, and then you get to be on ground level. Just comfortably work there, where it's a lot easier to paint. Doing anything on a ladder takes 2 to 3 times as long.
Yeah, because is that a combination in that mural of like spray paint, aerosol paint, and regular paint, or is it just one or the other?
It's all freehand spray.
Oh wow, that's even more incredible to me.
No brushes, no tape.
Is that just how you always do murals and paint?
Yeah. It's one of my tenets of painting is I try to paint as clean as possible, and I do it all freehand. Wow,
that's incredibly impressive to me, especially when something is so big. It's like I feel like the proportions of like getting something right close up and doing it freehand is just tough. Yeah,
there's a couple of ways about going about that, especially to get a portrait that big. Because when you're right up in front of the wall, the eye, one of her eyes is 2 feet wide. So I traditionally would use grids, like a 1 foot by 1 foot grid, and map it all out on the wall. And then my reference image, I would draw a 1 inch by 1 inch grid on there. And so I would look at that and be like, oh, so box 10 on section B, I know where the lines are supposed to come through. There's a challenge with that, though, because once you get up higher, is making sure that all your boxes are squared. So it's a new approach that has been gaining a lot of traction called a doodle grid. And I'm not sure, Sam, if you might have seen this when it was just going up. There was a bunch of squiggles and marks all over the wall.
Yeah.
So what that is you put a bunch of marks all over it, like triangles, smiley faces, hearts, just stuff that you would scribble on a notebook.
Yeah.
And you take a picture of that, and there's different apps that'll do it. You can overlay your reference image with all the doodles on there. You cut the opacity in half on both images. So when you zoom in, you get a lot more points of reference. So if you're going to draw an eye, you could see that, the iris of the eye cuts through this little X here, touches the tip of this triangle and comes over the top of this heart. And you draw that in then. And so when you're up in front of it, you don't even have to see the whole image. As long as the shapes that you're seeing on the screen match what's in front of you, you just draw your lines out. And I use chalk. I use chalk to draw everything out with, because if the line's not right, you rub it off, you put it back up until it is right. And then it's just a matter of filling it in. Kind of like I said, once the blueprint's on the wall and you know that all the contours are outlined correctly and you go to fill it in, you just go into the flow at that point.
Was there a specific piece or I guess time in your life where, you talked about sort of early on when you were doing this for fun and sort of doing it at night and by day you were doing other things. Did this turn for you at any point? Was there a specific piece that you created or like a class that you took or something that you were like, this is what I want to do now. Like, this is what I want to do for a career or for a job and anything like that?
Yeah. When I first moved to Portland back in 2015, a friend of mine introduced me to this client, this guy named Marco Sanchez, who runs a gym in Portland called PDX Fit. And he was, he's just a young entrepreneur, started from a small gym on the 3rd floor of his building and moved down into the larger space on the 2nd floor. And he was building out this gym, and my friend introduced him and said, hey, maybe he could do a mural in there for you. And so I did this big CrossFit gym mural. It was one of the first like big jobs I'd say that I had. And I did his logo and branding and everything for him. And he built his whole brand around this and that core feature. And I realized from that point, this is a skill set that I had been honing for years. I'm good at it. I love to paint. Maybe I can make this kind of a career move for myself. And it's just a matter of getting the traction up and getting enough attention from potential clients that you can stay consistent enough with it.
Because what were you doing before you did art full time?
I've kind of been all over the board. When I moved to California, so after that farm, I lived in Lake Tahoe for a while, lived up there for a few years before moving to Portland. I've been through all matters of the service industry. I've been a barista, I've been a server, I've been a bartender. And that's what I had done when I first moved to Portland is I got into the service industry here, kind of fell off from art for a couple of years, just trying to trying to get on my feet. Didn't really know anybody in the scene here. Didn't know the ins and outs of it here. So I kind of fell out for a little bit. Honestly, it was the pandemic that brought me back into it. I had been driving Uber and Lyft most recently. And when the pandemic hit, that business just dried up. There was no one went anywhere. So there's nowhere to drive.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I got to do something with my time. So I got a call. I got a call from Alberta Main Street to do that mural on the side of where Soleil's used to be, the trumpet mural. And so that gave me something to do. It was right in my neighborhood. So I just walk there every day and just work on it bit by bit.
Yeah.
And that created kind of a snowball effect into, the rest of the work that I did last summer.
So you talked about this a little bit, or we mentioned the word legacy. Like what do you want your art, and I guess, just your legacy as an artist, to be looked back upon?
It's that's kind of an ever changing ideology.
Yeah.
Anymore, I want to create work that just like kind of speaks to something a little bit deeper. So I kind of hold true that art to me is an expression of the self in its entirety. That expression can be visual through art or paint, or through like image making. That art can be through dance. It can be through song. It can be through storytelling. But the core element through all of that is art is an expression. Sometimes the expression is no expression, but that is still an expression. And so instead of just making things to look like things, which we are definitely in an era of right now, there's a lot of just imagery that looks really cool, but that's about it. I'm trying to create something that has some message or intention behind it. Moving forward, I'm trying to look more into kind of the human condition, create work that surrounds like human emotion, personal ideologies, our own like notion of reality, what that might look like manifested through art. And, trying to create something that really kind of provokes a little bit more thought. I don't know if I'm achieving that or not yet, but that's kind of the direction that I'm moving in these days.
I think you are. I mean, just based from the murals that I have seen, and your art that I've seen.
Thank you.
Even seeing that every single day out my window, it's not something that I feel like I take for granted. It's so beautiful and moving and so well done. So I think, you're definitely hitting that for me. You got me for sure. With all this, are you doing more murals right now? Like, is there more that you're creating around Portland?
After that Amanda Gorman mural, I definitely kind of got sacked with a handful of different projects. So I am looking at probably like a good few months of work right now, which I'm super blessed and thankful for. Unfortunately, I am in quarantine right now. I got hit with the Rona.
Oh, did you?
So I am in my quarantine space right now, but I'm taking this time to kind of prepare for the next couple of months, plan out some projects. I'm working on a canvas right now, commissioned canvas at the moment. And so it's good. I'm staying busy with projects even while I'm stuck inside.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to a good pre-summer.
Yeah. How are you feeling? Are you doing all right?
I'm completely asymptomatic.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's good.
If I didn't know that I had been exposed, I wouldn't have known. And I can sort of sense now that might be some of the trouble that's been going on with
some people, of the problem,
with people spreading it everywhere and not even knowing they had it. I'm very happy and fortunate and thankful though that I don't have very bad symptoms.
Yeah,
because it's allowing me to still kind of stay on my game and not lose time.
Yeah, no, for sure. I just got my second shot yesterday, so yeah.
How are you feeling?
I feel pretty okay. We had a cat vet emergency last night, so I can't tell if because I didn't sleep that I don't feel as great, or it's because of the shot. So up in the air, but I feel pretty good.
Well, you sound good though. I mean, I wouldn't be able to tell that you just had your shot and were fatigued or anything. Yeah,
no, I feel pretty okay. So, but I'm glad you're doing well. Yeah, because I was wondering the same thing though. With because we were both very like, wore masks, we're strict on like going out, but it seems like, a lot of the people just didn't even know that you had it, you know,
Yeah.
it just, you don't know. So I was always wondering if I had it before or something and just had no idea.
So it is a weird condition. And I think we're all going to come out of this with a little bit different perspective on how to move forward in the future with regards to contact and, you know, proximity with people. I don't know if we're just going to go right back into where we used to be, you know, people packing, you know, 5 deep at a bar.
Yeah.
If people are going to try to maintain their space a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know either, but I guess we'll see with the times coming up. Well,
Yeah.
I hope that continues for you, and I hope you get out and you're all right. How long has it been?
Since last Friday. So been down a week.
Okay. So you probably are okay, all right then. Yeah.
I feel great.
Yeah. That's good. Well, I'm glad. And I guess apart from all this, where can people find your work? Where can they contact you if they are interested in art and they want to collaborate or partner with you?
I've got a website. It's www.campographic.com, or they can find me on Instagram at Campo Graphic, like graphic design. Those are my two sources. And yeah, just looking to keep on networking and expanding and adding more stuff to the page.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Your art is amazing. So I really appreciate your time, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Absolutely, Sam. Thanks a lot. Yeah, hope this was informative for you, and hopefully it was informative for some of your listeners as well, to kind of give them a little insight into the graffiti culture and street art culture.
Yeah, because I feel like it's one of those things where it's seen a lot. Like, people see a lot of it, but they don't know a lot about it. I mean, at least from my perspective, I feel like that's the case, you know? So yeah, no, I appreciate you coming on and talking about it.
Absolutely, man.
All right.
Yeah, thank you so much.